So I'm wondering tonight, what is the family of the suspected Long Island serial killer going through right now? What is this whole experience going to be like? And what we've heard from law enforcement, this is not about anything that they did. That's what we're hearing, at least. So how do you comprehend all of this, where your life has been turned upside down in a moment like that? And now the spotlight, to a certain extent, is on you as well, because you are the wife, you are the son, you are the daughter of someone who is suspected of being a serial killer. I want you to take a listen. This is Rodney Harrison, Suffolk County Police Commissioner, who gave us a slight indication about the reaction of the suspected serial killer's family when they found out.
When we initially informed them about their husband, their father, they were shocked. They were disgusted. They were embarrassed. So if you ask me, I don't believe that they knew about this double life that Mr. Heuermann was living. But time will tell. And once again, there's still a lot more questioning that needs to be done to the family, to friends, taking a look at some of the calls that are coming in and seeing what information we could gather to see if the family might have known exactly what Mr. Heuermann was up to.
And again, right now they have no information or no indication or evidence that they knew any of this was going on. As a matter of fact, they've sort of indicated that when the family was out of town and out of the area is when these murders may have occurred. So to understand this tonight, I want to bring in a very special guest joining us tonight from Orlando, Florida. She's the daughter of the infamous serial killer Dennis Rader, known as BTK. Kerry Rawson has been kind enough to join us tonight. Kerry, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Can we start here? Because Rodney Harrison there describing the first time law enforcement revealed to the family what they suspected the father had done here, the husband had done here. That's a difficult moment from your own personal experience. What was going on in your family when the arrest was made and the announcement was made?
So my father, Dennis Rader, otherwise known as BTK, was arrested in February of 2005. The law enforcement had been looking for him for 31 years. And he had been dormant for almost a decade and a half, and then he came back and started communications and playing what he called cat and mouse games with law enforcement for almost a year. And so they narrowed him down through a massive investigation, multi-task forces, massive DNA swabbing. And we knew that they were looking for BTK. I was married. I was in my mid-20s living in Michigan. This was all happening back in Wichita, Kansas. And so, we knew they were looking for BTK, but it wasn't until there was a knock on my door by an FBI agent literally saying, I need to talk to you. And then he just dropped it and he said, your dad is BTK. And so for us, it was just a total, absolutely shock, completely floored. I went into medical shock. I was shaking for 5 days. It took 3 or 4 days to get me back home due to the media and everything going on. We basically just got me on a plane and got me home, and then we all just hunkered down and wrote it out.
Was it, and I can't imagine what you were going through, was it difficult did you believe it at first? Were you skeptical? How did you receive that information?
I was like all of the emotions you might have when you're going through grief, right? So you go through anger, you go through bargaining, you go through denial, you're going through shock, and you're going through trauma. And so I literally became a trauma victim at that point of the notification, because I thought my mother had been killed by my dad. I thought my grandmother had been killed by BTK. I thought I had lost family members, and I have PTSD still 18 years later from that moment. And so an FBI agent, he's like trying to like question me and get information. Well, 7 of the murders were before I was born. So I was asking about the other 3. I was asking about the other date because they had arrested him on 8. And they said, well, he's wanted for one from 1986. And I said, oh, well, my neighbor lady was murdered in 85. And as far as I know, it was unsolved. And then it was like my guts ripped in two. And they said, well, BTK, I said BTK cuts phone lines. And I knew my neighbor's phone line had been cut. And I knew she had been missing. She had like been taken from her house and found a few weeks later out in the woods. And she had been strangled. And as a 6-year-old, I knew that. So like these things I knew in 85 now are coming back in 2005. And I'm sitting here alibying my father and defending him. And then all of a sudden I'm literally turning him in on a murder they hadn't arrested him on. And so like your whole world is imploding and you're sitting there starting to like in that first few hours, like realizing like the man you knew that raised you is not who you thought he was.
And that really leads to my next question about this dual life. Some people from the outside might say, well, no, there has to be clues, there have to be indications. But in your case, there weren't. I presume there weren't. How do you explain to someone what it's like having lived with that person, known that person as dad, and now the world knows him as someone else?
We get asked that all the time. Like, how did you not know? Did you enable? Did you protect this person? I mean, I'm still being asked that today, and it's been a couple decades for me, and now I am trying to defend Rex's innocent family members. As far as we know, they're innocent. In the case of my family, what the public didn't know until I started speaking up 10 years later, we were silent for 10 years, and I'm still the only one from my family speaking up. The public did not know that we were abuse victims, emotional abuse, mental abuse, coercive control of our family. We were living with a psychopath, a narcissist. He's a sexual sadistic psychopath and a pathological liar. I'll tell you in one breath that I left my dad and we traveled and we camped and we fished. And in the next breath, I will tell you how abusive he could be. He physically abused my brother, decades-long abuse in my house. And so when you're talking about somebody that on the outside externally looks like this really great guy, Boy Scout leader, church leader, stand-up community man, no criminal record, just like Rex. And then you start digging and you find out, you know, how bad they could be. And then you combine that with this knowledge of how they were controlling their family and all the stuff. There was a ton of stuff found in our house, like in Rex's house, like similar. My house inside was rather messy with closets, and there were just places you didn't go and you didn't question Dad's authority. The reality is you still don't even go from, say, abuse to assuming somebody is a murderer. You don't. I was raised into this family. I didn't know any difference.
That is so eye-opening, the way you describe that. And it's a perspective I had not even considered or thought before. So what message would you have for people now who are either in the lives of the family or are interacting, or even strangers who come across this family? What would you say to those people? How to speak with the accused serial killer's wife and children? What would make it better for them, easier for them? How should they be treated by society?
First off, just approach him like you were mentioning in your lead about victims and victims' rights. There's legal victims, and then there's like those like external victims, and we need to approach like a serial killer suspect family the same as we would a victim survivor family of, say, on the other end where they've lost somebody. We deserve the same sort of rights as soon as our family is cleared or the family is cleared by law enforcement. Law enforcement quickly were protecting us and keeping us informed, helping us with court. Public defenders stepped in and helped my family. Prosecution was helping us. All of this stuff is going on in the background and the public really isn't aware. And I asked a few years ago for victim services to deal with some issues with my father in prison, and people stepped right in. So I have really good working relationships with like the police right now. And like my advice is for anybody around this family, just embrace them and take care of them. They're going through this insane shock. They're in the public eye. And they're grieving the loss of their husband and their father. And in any way that they knew them, it's really like a death. Plus you're international news and you never asked for any of this. And it gets better in time. It settles down as the media cycles. But the reality is this is never going to be over for them. It's not ever over for me or my family. It's just our reality.
How about advice for those family members?
Oh, just hunker down, do what you need to do. I was so impressed with her filing for the divorce. I thought that was a huge just signal to Rex that she's just done. And to the community in general that, you know, like she's not him and this is not her and she's done. I would say just keep working with lawyers, take care of yourself, one thing at a time, one step at a time. Don't feel like you owe anybody anything. And if you do want to talk, then great. We're all ready to hear what you want to say, but don't feel like you owe anybody. Issue a statement legally if you want to do that, that can help. And then just know that you're not alone and everybody's behind you and you're going to be okay.
Now, your perspective is obviously very unique, and you've alluded to a couple things, but I want to dive a little deeper. First, your thoughts about this alleged serial killer, from what you've learned, what you've seen, from your perspective, what are your thoughts?
Oh, man. Based on the charging bail papers, I'm sure we're looking at the correct suspect on the Gilgo Beach 4. We're waiting on Maureen. We're waiting on DNA on her. I've heard that we're just waiting on some facts to get sealed up there, but I'm definitely sure on the 4 for him. I would be shocked if it was not him based on the DNA and what we're hearing about what's coming out of his house. Now, for the other victims that have been found out on the beach, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm telling people to just kind of temper down and let law enforcement do what they need to do. I know I'm hearing that they're like checking Atlantic City. There's 4 that were buried or left out in the open there in a similar fashion. So I know that they're checking Atlantic City. Now they're looking at South Carolina, possibly Vegas. I mean, we're just, I think, really at the beginning of this investigation. And so we just need to be patient because, I mean, we're even hearing things coming out of this house just tonight. And so I really expect this, we're all going to be in this for the long haul.
And can you expound a little bit more on some of the similarities that you have observed between this accused killer and your father, and the lives that they're living, and what we know about this accused killer?
As soon as I saw the charging papers on Friday, I actually was cussing on Twitter because it was so similar. Rex is so similar to my father. They're both sexual sadistic psychopaths. I mean, that's where I'm at with Rex. We're gonna have to wait and see. He sounds like a narcissist like my father. He sounds very like controlling, anger management issues. Driven by like sexual fetishes, collecting, like we see Rex's searches on the internet, like looking for like death porn and just really graphic, awful things. I mean, it's very similar to what my father was pursuing in between murdering. So they're very similar as both being family men and appearing outside one way and then hiding these horrible things inside and not being caught for decades. Knowing how bad my father is, I hope that they're going to be looking at Rex for probably close to 4 decades, and I know that they will. They're just quite similar, and we're just going to have to see what comes out. There's just so much we don't know right now.
Do you think he wanted to get caught, and do you think he's enjoying this notoriety now?
I don't think he wanted to get caught any more than my dad did. My dad was playing stupid games, and he got caught. If my dad had not been playing those games, I don't think they would have caught him that early. They would have caught up with him finally with familiar DNA, definitely by now. With Rex, definitely I don't think he wanted to get caught. I mean, I don't even think he had any idea there was an investigation going on for over a year. I mean, you see him walking out of his office and he's just strolling along to get on the train. Like, that man is not expecting the men in black to come pick him up, right? And as far as we know, he was still doing things with burner phones, still doing Google searches, searching for information on his investigation. My father was doing the same back in 2005. He was cutting out news articles. He was collecting them. He was sending things into the police. I would say if my father was still out in the public and hadn't been arrested, I would assume he would be heavily on the internet like Rex was, using phones. All of that sort of stuff nowadays, I would be a very scary reality if you would think about my dad catching up with technology.
Kerry, really eye-opening stuff tonight. I feel so bad for what you have been through and what your family has been through, but we really appreciate you educating us and giving us a perspective that fortunately very few people have, but it is a part of your life. Kerry Rawson, thank you so much.
And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, we're going to talk more about this. South Carolina, Las Vegas, this investigation is now spreading out, as Kerry said, plus coming up next hour. Carly Russell called 911 reporting a toddler in diapers on the side of a highway. Then she disappeared for 48 hours. She returned home and her family says she was kidnapped. But many on social media are skeptical, as are investigators. Tonight, we look at what Carly's boyfriend is doing on social media and what could happen to Carly if police determine it was all a hoax.
Carly's 911 call remains the only report of a child on the interstate, despite numerous vehicles passing through the area at that time. No one has called to report that a child is missing, and the Hoover Police Department did not locate any evidence of a small child.
Business, accused of killing a man and later dismembering his body.
The details are something out of a terrible nightmare.
Leaving the head of the victim in a bucket.
It is an absolute horror show.
It's a bizarre case that's already seen its share of fireworks.
Business violently attacked her own attorney.
So what is the defense here?
Anything is possible when it comes down to a jury trial.
The House of Horrors murder trial. Live coverage coming soon, only on Court TV.
If you could catch the gate open, there's tarps, there's all kind of weird stuff. He's got, like I said, a deuce-and-a-half military Army vehicle in there, or he did.
All right, that's a man from South Carolina describing the property of the accused Long Island serial killer's brother, but it's really the Long Island serial killer's property. He owns it. His brother lives there. Take a look. We've got some video from the property. This murder investigation now has expanded down to South Carolina as well. Let's bring in our guest to talk about all this. In Las Vegas, Nevada, serial killer expert, criminologist, author, and host of the podcast Killing Hour with Doc Brown, Dr. Scott Bond is with us. And in Chicago, Illinois, private investigator, founder of Victims News Online, Erica Morse is with us. All right, great to have you both here. This whole thing is expanding down to South Carolina now. Dr. Scott Bond, let me start with you. Do you think that this alleged serial killer, right, took his show on the road, perhaps to South Carolina or to other places?
I think there's a distinct possibility, Vinny, to the extent that he was still active in 2011, and I think he probably was, and his sacred burial ground had been discovered, and I don't mean that facetiously. I think to a narcissistic psychopath like this was truly this was his special place. He's going to find another. And I am concerned that there is another burial ground out there with bodies that might yet be to be discovered.
Erica Morse, there are a lot of missing women. There are a lot of unsolved cases. And I've got to think everyone's kind of taking a closer look now at all of their perhaps cold cases.
That is exactly what happens when a story like this breaks, Vinny. When Israel Keys was discovered, we developed a group and everybody started comparing notes. We saw this expand already into Nevada and South Carolina, but then we have the mention of Amberlynn Costello. That jogged a memory in me. My team worked a case in 2020, Becky Fellows Garcia, and through that case discovered a dumping ground of sorts of female sex workers in the Hope Mills and Wilmington, North Carolina areas. Instantly, that's what I thought of tonight. I'll be reaching out to those PDs and North Carolina Bureau of Investigation to follow up with that.
Now, there's also, as you mentioned, some action out where you are, Dr. Scott Bond, out in Nevada. Las Vegas police reviewing unsolved murder cases for any possible connection to this suspect. According to property records obtained by CNN, the suspected serial killer and his wife bought 2 Las Vegas timeshare condos over the years. He was known to have spent time there, including attending a convention back in 2017. And a spokesperson for the Las Vegas Metro Police say they're reviewing unsolved cases to see if he had any possible involvement. Do you think he'll talk? Do you think he'll talk? Do you think at any point he'll want to take credit for any of this?
That's a great question, and I've been asked that over the last couple of days quite a bit, and I think it could frankly go one of two ways. To the extent that he looks at the evidence and decides that the gig is up, they got me, there's just no way that I'm going to get out of this, then he may go the way of Dennis Rader, BTK, who stood up and said, let me get on this grandstand and let me go on the public stage, and now I'm going to bask in the glory of my great work. That's a possibility. Another possibility for a narcissistic psychopath like this is that he'll milk it as long as possible, play cat and mouse the way Ted Bundy did. So I could really see it going either way. But it's in both cases, what's driving his decision, and I think he will make a practical decision, a rational decision, it's based upon his narcissism, malignant narcissism, sadism, and his psychopathy.
Erica Morse, do you think they should only be looking at cases involving escorts, or should it be a wider net of unsolved cases?
Personally, I would start with your sex workers, and here's why. I got an interview with a woman named Nicole Brass, and Nicole talked about, first of all, he mentioned during their dinner that there's a New Jersey victim, and that's never been discussed. So, but she described a very chilling conversation, him talking specifically about this case, him giving specifics. It was like she said he was bursting at the seams to brag. I think he really wanted to be known. And she suspected that perhaps as he was killing these women, that maybe he was telling them about the other victims. I think this is a power and control. I think it's a sadism, an issue all the way. And so that generally tends to fit a specific profile, but I would start there because there are so missing and unclaimed and unidentified women, and quite frankly, they never get this type of attention, and I think we need to start there.
Dr. Scott Bond, in many of these cases, and perhaps this one included, there seems to be periods of where these murders take place, then there's times where there's a dormancy. I think some people were thinking maybe he's dead, maybe the killer could be in prison. In this particular case, if in fact he is the one responsible for what happened here, would there be any reason or explanation as to why he may stop doing it for a while?
I believe, again, once his burial ground was discovered in 2011, I believe he was probably still active, and he simply took it elsewhere. And I would be looking in particular in Las Vegas, because they find bodies out in the desert here all the time. And again, from the standpoint of a psychopathic killer, it's a wonderful place to just deposit a body out in, out in the sand, out in the desert. If I was a betting man, and I do live in Las Vegas, I am less hopeful that there's going to be any sort of a link in Atlantic City, because the cases they're looking at there, it's a different kind of profile. The bodies there were left in a ditch, but they were posed. They were posed, which suggests a fantasy need of the killer to shock the public. This guy is completely different. He dismembered them meticulously, put them in a bag, tied them up, and put them in a very isolated area. It's a different pathology that drives something like that. The same serial killer is not going to dispose of bodies in those two extremely different ways. In my experience, you're not going to see that.
Erica Morris, how much evidence do you think they're going to be able to get from his home?
You would expect a guy like this to have trophies. There has to be a trophy somewhere, but there also needs to be an off-site search. I'd be looking for a storage unit. I would be looking for an office, an exterior office, maybe in a complex somewhere. This man has collected. Just like Carrie talked about her dad, I think he absolutely has captured every moment and a photograph, big driver's licenses, OB there, a whole plethora of options there. But he is going to be there's going to be a lot of evidence. I think there really is, and I think that they're going to have plenty to tie him to. And they're also submitting DNA statewide, and I'm hoping to hear that they've changed that to a nationwide search as well.
Dr. Scott Bond, do serial killers prepare for that moment when they're going to get caught? Like, is there a contingency plan? Have they done certain things, put certain things into motion to be ready at any moment for that time when finally they get the tap on the shoulder?
No, especially not this type of serial killer. I believe that he's very much in the power control category. This guy is grandiose. I believe he was truly shocked when they came up and nabbed him the other day. I think that he thinks he's smarter than the average bear, and he was going to get away with this. So no. What I believe is going to happen, and we talked about this a bit earlier, he's going to look at his situation, and he's going to decide what feeds his ego and his psychological needs better. Jump up on the bandstand and say, yeah, you got me, but you fools, look how long it took you. Look what I was able to do, and you couldn't catch me. Or he could milk it, as I said, like Ted Bundy. But it's all going to be what serves his egotistical grandiosity at this point.
All right, we're going to talk more about this. Erica Morris, thank you so much. Great to see you tonight. Dr. Scott Bond's going to stay with us. When we come back, more on the suspected Long Island serial killer.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Can keep my life straight.
That demanded our attention.
They were killed by their own children.
That challenged the legal system and ourselves.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before reporting her child missing?
These are the trials that became legendary. And now you can relive them all in one place. Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
He's been very compliant. He's laying on his bunk. He's been extremely quiet, not really talkative to staff. If we ask a question, he's answering the question, but he's not engaging us with too much.
Quiet, compliant, and not engaging enough behind bars. The suspected Long Island serial killer, that from the local sheriff. Still with me, serial killer expert, Dr. Scott Bond, and joining us from New York City, nationally known psychotherapist, host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. All right, Dr. Robbie, start with you on the description of his demeanor behind bars. What do you think's going on here?
Well, I think he knows how to behave when he's in public. And also the way he's behaving also indicates some degree of control. He can control what he decides to say and not say. He can control his demeanor. And so he's staying guarded and quiet and probably assessing his situation. So although he's quiet on the outside, his brain is working as to what's in his best interest at this point in time.
Now, a former escort named Nicole Brass claims she went on a date with the accused killer back in 2015. And last night she told Chris Cuomo on News Nation the accused killer talked to her about the murders.
I said, well, have you heard of the Gilgo beach murders? And I said, yeah, everybody from Long Island has. We're all following that case. And then he started, like, talking about it. And he tried to say, like, you know, he and hypotheticals and, like, what he thought. But it was the way that he was saying it didn't seem like a true crime fan who just wanted to talk about it.
Help me understand. Like, what were you picking up?
Like, his body language kind of changed, and, like, his eyes were, like, as if he was in a different place. Like, he was picturing it all over again. Like, he wasn't, like, quite... It was weird. He almost kind of made the victims, like, seem like people who didn't matter.
Dr. Scott Bond, what do you think of that?
Well, you know, I live in Las Vegas, and it's almost like a tell in a poker player. They get a great hand, a winning hand, and then they always scratch their eyebrow or something like that. And so you know that they have a great hand. It's the same thing here in my mind. This guy is bursting with excitement. This is, in his mind, his great life's work, and he can barely contain himself with his enthusiasm for it. And so. It really doesn't surprise me at all. I think he's a complete narcissist and psychopath, and only sees the world through the lens that is going to give him pleasure.
Let's take a listen now. This is from TikTok. This is a woman who was part of a networking group with the accused killer, Dominique Vidal. Let's take a look.
He asked me, do I know about the Gilgo beach murders? And of course I do. I'm pretty sure there's a multi-part episode on Crime Junkie. And I'm like, yeah, of course I know. And he goes on to tell me, yeah, that's a serial killer that was never caught in my hometown.
Dr. Robbie, that's chilling, you know, looking at it from where we are now.
He's a star waiting to be discovered. It's just a matter of who's going to play him in the movie. You know, what good-looking actor. I think that there's also, too, a sexual sadistic paraphilia. So he is very sexually sadistic. And part of the joy in killing these women is that it's sexual for him. And he gets off on not only inducing pain, but in killing them and probably dismembering them. And that's all part of his sexual fantasy, which becomes his signature. So there's a sense of pride that he has. He doesn't care about these women. It means nothing. He has no connection. He's more of a predator. But there's a sexual excitement and orgasmic component to these killings.
Dr. Scott Bond, from studying serial killers and looking at this one, is there generally something that happened in their life that led them there, or are they just wired differently and it just happens?
Wonderful question. And, you know, it gets down to nature versus nurture. And in the case of serial killers, in my experience, at least 50% of them are real psychopaths. And as such, the brain is simply different, particularly in the frontal lobe that controls impulses. They have virtual low to no impulse control. And these individuals, as my colleague said, they look at other humans as simply prey, or at least objects to amuse themselves. In fact, Ted Bundy called his victims objects, and BTK referred to them as projects, like he was collecting butterflies or something like that. Do these individuals evolve? They do. No one wakes up in the morning and says, today's a great day to become a serial killer. It evolves. It usually typically starts right around puberty, right around adolescence. It escalates and escalates, and a fantasy loop plays over and over and over in their minds, frequently combined with masturbation, and it reaches a tipping point, often in the early to mid-20s, where they simply cannot control that itch anymore. It must be scratched, and the only thing that will do it is kill. And I believe that he, in all likelihood, evolved just that way. And the serial killer that he reminds me the most of, one who I know researched and corresponded with extensively, is Dennis Rader. I know you interviewed her daughter before. So similar to BTK in many ways.
And she said the same thing. Dr. Robbie, and looking at him, right? So you look at the age that he is now. If this potentially started in his 20s, I guess you've got to go way back in time to understand where this guy was and who he was interacting with and everything else to try to figure it out. Do you think this is a guy who will ever volunteer that information? Like, what, from your perspective, what do you think could set him to, like, say, okay, now I'm going to tell you everything?
I think it all has to do with the attention and maybe making his mark in history. The killings are almost like an obsessive compulsion, so that he has to do it then and may need it more frequently. But in terms of sharing his story, it will have a lot to do with the fantasies going on in his head, how he wants to present himself. How does he want to use this moment to maximize his fame and to share his brilliance? I mean, in his own mind, there is a grandiosity. He is smarter than most. He may feel that he knows better than everybody else, that these women are trash, that people are trash in general. It wouldn't surprise me if he was also abusive to his wife. From what I've heard, she was using food stamps, so probably emotionally abusive and financially abusive. So this is a man that will probably like the idea of sharing his story and the pain that it will inflict, because that's something he could review in his mind and get excited about.
All right, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, Dr. Scott Bond, thank you both so much tonight. Appreciate your insight. We'll speak again. Thank you.